So Assassin's Creed 3 takes place approximately from 1753 to 1783. We're going to be covering the events that lead up to, include, and then slightly follow the American Revolution. Another major event that is not quite the revolution, but is closely associated and attached to it and leads into it, that we'll be exploring a little bit, not nearly as much as the Revolution, is the 7 Years' War, also known as the French and Indian War.
I think the American Revolution is interesting as a setting because it's kind of the birth of this of a pretty incredible history. It's where it starts, right? All this kind of amazing stuff happens, and it's kind of watching the inception of all that and exploring the different people and how they interact, and all these people have been kind of. It's such a widely taught history that people have a certain notion of it, and it's fun to try and go in there and find the little facts about it that people don't know as much. One that really surprised me right from the get-go was the perception of George Washington as being this incredible military commander. My perception was that he was almost undefeated. He just went in there and kicked ass, for lack of a better term. But when we started diving into it, he lost a lot, and he made a lot of big mistakes, and his actual strength was being able to motivate people and inspire troops and keep the fight going and surviving to fight another day. And that's what really made him as special as a commander in the military. And it wasn't so much that he was this tactical genius or anything. He was this really lucky person, and there's always accounts of having 3 horses shot out from under him coming back from battles and having like holes in his jacket and in his hat, and having his hat shot off his head on numerous occasions in different battles. And to think that there was, in these different accounts, upwards of 7, 8, 9, 10 different versions of this happening to him, that was exciting to think of. A lot of these guys lived through this stuff, and they rolled the dice and they got through it on the back of chance and
on the back of the assassin.
Oh, maybe it was the assassin. But that was really interesting. There's another character, Israel Putnam, who's this kind of another folklore hero, and he's become that. And he's a wild guy. He went into like it's almost a fable. We can't confirm nor deny that this actually happened, but there's writings of him going into the last wolf den in Connecticut by himself, being held by his ankles with a torch and a knife, and killing the last wolf like in the den. And like he was in a shipwreck in the Caribbean. He was one of the only survivors, and they found him like eating leather on a beach, and he like came out of it alive. And then he got caught by some Native Americans, and he survived that encounter. And then all of a sudden he's in like the Revolution, and he's standing up on top of the battlements at the Battle of Bunker Hill saying, "Come on, bring it at me!" And there's cannonballs flying past him. Like, this guy has been through so much in his life, and he's like, again, one of these little events happens differently, and maybe the Battle of Bunker Hill is different because he's not there. Maybe all these things change, and that kind of little subtle moments that happen to these people is pretty cool to think about.
It was also really neat to see that even back then there was all kinds of crazy like propaganda and whitewashing and attempts to spin going on. So the battles of Lexington and Concord, specifically at Lexington, that was when the symbolic first shot of the American Revolution was fired, and no one wanted to take ownership for it, right? Like, who wants to be the person that kicked this thing off? So you have the Americans on one side saying, no, the British did it, we had nothing to do with this, we were just defending ourselves. And the Brits are saying, we had nothing to do with this, they attacked us, and they even have eyewitness testimony and accounts from back then, but like some of them contradict each other.
Comes
and,
from
one
behind
side
a tavern, it
one
comes
thing,
from over here, it's amazing.
Like, this guy would came around the building and shot at us, or like I was cleaning my gun and it like went off, and then there was a big misunderstanding, and it's just, there were literally people arguing about like, well, how do we position this so it looks good for us? And the way that, other things have been romanticized over the year, like Paul Revere was not the only person to ride to warn the people. In the night before the battle, there were actually several people that were sent out. He didn't even make it all the way to Concord. He's captured on the way from Lexington to Concord. But what happened is several years later, they were writing a song, and
like
his name
75
rhymed.
years later. Yeah. It was in it was like 1850s.
So
roughly.
His last name rhymed with the previous verse, and so he became the face of the Midnight Ride.
And the other side of that as well is that everyone remembers that, or actually reads about that, as he was riding through the countryside yelling, the British are coming, the British are coming. Well, first of all, he wouldn't have said the British, because most of the people who were patriots would have been British.
They identified as British.
So it would have been the regulars are coming, which is, but
the regulars are coming out.
Yeah. On top of that, he wouldn't have gone through shouting, because back in the time it was loyalist, patriot. So if you were shouting, all the loyalists would come out too. So he was actually going. They were going to individual houses and saying it quietly. Regulars are coming out, regulars are coming out, to keep it a secret. So this kind of, again, this romanticized version of like, the British are coming, and riding through the countryside, that actually never happened. And it's just interesting, you know, spin on that whole thing. People see in textbooks. I mean, that's how it's taught to people on a lot of levels, and you see that evolution is kind of neat.
There was a point when, because it's in the script written as the way it happened, and someone was like, wait, is he supposed to say the British are coming? Nope, he's not. And here's the evidence. So it's like fun little things like that are always really kind of just cool. Like strange facts, like Thomas Jefferson dressed really strangely, like really bright clothes, and he was sort of a fashionista.
And he was a horrible public speaker as well. Like he was unable to orate, you know, anywhere. So he would always just write these documents out, you know, that would speak for him. And that's kind of interesting to think of this guy who's, again, he's such a hero. He's more than a hero. He's like gone beyond that in American history.
And there's some other like really crazy messed up stuff that I have to keep secret that I think will, in some cases, pleasantly surprise people, and in other cases potentially shock them. But like once again, we have you know, historical documents, letters written by people saying certain things, and it'll be, I think, neat to share these with our audience. Part of the fun with the franchise is that people have an idea, or they believe they know what the American Revolution was like. They believe they know who the founding fathers were. There's almost this romantic, idealized view of back then, and I think it's really interesting to be able to show people, you know, how it really was, or as close to what it may have really been than they may believe, right? It wasn't quite so clear cut. It wasn't a matter of the founding fathers being these immaculate heavenly figures
they
defended. Yeah, they were definitely people, and they all had different points of view and different opinions on things, no matter how much politicians may want to co-opt them for their own nefarious purposes. On all sides of the spectrum, you know, we're trying to be balanced. I think that's also really important. We're not promoting any sort of political agenda. We literally want to say, these are the people, here's what they did. You, as an individual, can make a decision as to whether or not they were good or bad.